Είμαι πάρα πολύ περήφανος που έχουμε μαζί μας αυτή τη στιγμή δύο από τα ιδρυτικά of the founding members, right?
Yeah.
Of the Zombies.
Yeah.
Mr. Colin Bluntstone and Rod Argent?
Yeah.
Or Argent?
Argent.
Argent, okay. I think that was the name of the band you
It was
formed at
the
some
name of my
point.
second band, yeah.
Okay, now we've got the Zombies in the studio. The year is 2011.
It is.
And I see you smiling, I see you happy, I see you in Greece, I saw you a couple of nights ago playing at the TV. I've seen videos on YouTube from the concerts you've been performing now. And it's like, I don't think that the day has passed.
No, well, I really hope not. I mean, in some ways, it feels like we're just beginning. I know that sounds crazy, but because the first Zombies broke up in 1967, even though Odyssey and Oracle didn't come out until 68, and then Time of the Season was a hit all over the world in 1969, but we actually broke up the first time in 67, and then we had a big career doing many other things.
Yeah, I've seen the biography of all of you guys, and it was like all over the place.
Yeah.
With big bands as well. I think you've been working with Alan Parsons' project
for years. I knew Alan very well because I lived near him, and then when he started doing his projects, I was on about 6 or 7.
You've been participating in these projects as well, I think. Just you go. Don't let me say. We want what we want is from an encyclopedia kind of view. The beginning of the Zombies, and we want to focus mainly on the feelings and on the experience of the time back then, and of what's it like still being the Zombies and people loving you.
We had our very first rehearsal. We met each other at the first rehearsal, actually, because I was desperate to form a band. And I was desperate because my cousin, who is a bass player and is still playing bass with us now, he's 4 years older than me. You met him last night, Jim, yeah? He was in one of the first bands, electric bands, in the whole of the south of England. And I'd seen him play and I thought it was fantastic. And I asked him to be in the band, in the Zombies, right at the beginning. He said no because he was in a great local band. But a friend of mine who I got to be in the band knew Colin. He was a schoolmate of Colin's, and we just got these 5 people together. We'd never played together. We didn't know what it was going to be like, and we had our first rehearsal 50 years ago in Easter in 1961. We met outside a pub in England, and we borrowed all Jim's gear, equipment, and we went into the rehearsal room, and we started playing. And I was supposed to be the lead singer, first of all, and Colin was going to just play guitar.
And then he came, and then he started singing.
Well, he started singing, but also I wasn't going to play any piano or anything. I thought you played guitars in a band, and this was 1961. And Colin heard me play Nut Rocker on a piano in the rehearsal room, and he thought it was great. And he said, "You've got to play piano in the band." I said, "Well, I don't know, I'm not sure." And then a few minutes later, he was sat down, started strumming a guitar and singing a Ricky Nelson song. It sounded absolutely great. And I said, "Well, you've got to be the lead singer. So, okay, I'll play piano and you can be lead singer." And that was it on the first day. And that's when we started, 50 years ago.
Do you remember the story as the same way as...
So far, because we do have a slight problem. Because it's such a long time ago, there are lots of things that we remember quite differently. And so,
so far the story is much. Okay. What was it like in Britain then, in the 60s, when that music, when rock and roll started?
It was fantastic.
Well, I think it was part of an arts movement, really. The post-war years in Britain were very austere. You know, food was rationed. It was very tough for people, but we were just coming out of that austerity, and people were joining bands, and there was just a spark of people like David Bailey, Mary Quant, John Osborne. Suddenly, London was becoming the centre of the artistic world, Michael Caine, and all these things, film, fashion, photography, and of course the Beatles, as far as music is concerned, changed everything because they opened the door to the world for British bands, and probably especially to America, which is always a very tough place for bands to go and play.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Another question that was coming up was like, you can continue, I think, with this story after the blossom of arts in London. Yeah, what was it like to invade USA?
It was it was absolutely unbelievable, because when you think about it, in 1961, it was only 5 years before, really 5 or 6 years before, that certainly my world had been turned around by hearing Elvis with his very early records like That's All Right Mama, Hound Dog, Lordy Miss Claudy, all those things, which I still love. I love it. For the first 3 years of his life, I think he sounds fantastic.
I think some at some point in your life when you love music, some things that make you love music will stay with you forever.
Stay with you forever.
You'll never forget them. You'll never stop listening to them, and you'll never get the feelings.
You never get quite that same thing.
No, okay, but
what was extraordinary was that there we were in 1964. Going to America, which still was only 8 years, maybe 8 years after I'd heard Elvis, and we went to Elvis's house, and there was no security, and we just knocked on. We walked through his gates. We knocked on the door, bang, 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 and I said, "Hello, is Elvis in?" and this guy, who was obviously his father, is Vernon, said, "Well, Elvis is away filming at the moment, but he'd be real sorry to have missed you guys." And I thought, well, it's very sweet of him. Complete rubbish. He doesn't know who we are, but it's very sweet of him. And we had a look around all the grounds and everything, and he said, "Look around the house."
Was it like the mansion? Was it already the mansion?
Yeah,
Gracelands. Yeah, this was Gracelands. Yeah,
okay.
There was no security at that time.
You could just walk up and knock on the door.
Just walk up and knock on the door. And so.
And I think it's a theme park or something.
Yeah.
They've turned it to Stonehenge or the Acropolis or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I was telling this story many years later to a DJ in Ireland on a radio interview. And when I got to the bit saying he obviously didn't know who we were, the DJ stopped me and he said, "Whoa, just stop." He said, "I'm an Elvis freak." He said, "I can't believe you've lived all these years and you didn't know that Elvis had your records on his jukebox."
You're kidding.
And I could not believe that. And the fact that there we were, 19-year-old kids, and Elvis, this guy who was a complete icon in 1956 for me and changed my whole musical world around. And I thought America was unattainable and there was no way we could take music to America. And he got our records, songs that I'd written on his jukebox. That was absolutely extraordinary.
But in a way, that's why it's so extraordinary that what they called the British invasion happened in 1964, and roles were completely reversed. And remember that for us, a few months before, we had been playing in schools and local clubs around, around where we lived. And now suddenly...
What was the turning point? What was it?
Oh, she's not there. There's a difference of opinion how we got a record deal with Decca Records, and we were allowed to go into their studios in London, and we were going to record different songs. One of them was Gershwin in Summertime, and our producer, called Ken Jones, just as an aside, he said, "Well, maybe you could just write something for the session." And I completely forgot about this. But Rod and our bass player, who's called Chris White, went away and wrote 2 cracking songs, and Rod's song was She's Not There. So suddenly, this first session changed completely. We were recording basically songs that were written by people in the band, whereas before we were going to do covers. And She's Not There was in the UK, was a hit pretty much straight away. It was a little bit later in America, but She's Not There was a worldwide hit, and of course our lives have changed forever.
Okay, what happened with Time of the Season?
Time of the Season, we'd recorded. I mean, this was just 3 years later.
It's playing in the background.
It's playing in the background. Okay. Right, okay. Well,
no, it just happened before it came after the question.
Okay.
I think things are happening.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'd recorded on a Sinoracle because this is where our memories changed a little bit. But I had the feeling that the band was about to split up because the 2 writers Chris White and myself were getting a very good income, because even though we didn't find out until later, in many countries in the world we had hit records, but in the UK we only ever had one hit, and that was She's Not There. So the income from live gigs, because we didn't travel as much in those days, was not great. So some of the guys, particularly the guitarist, he was getting married. He said, listen guys, he said, I can't really afford to live, I've got to move on. So, and my memory was that Colin was sort of a little bit unsure as well. But anyway, we made this album, which we desperately wanted.
Please tell me things didn't happen because of money.
Well,
in a
way they did.
There was an element of that. Not because we didn't have a second Rolls Royce. It's because we couldn't eat.
There was no income coming in.
The guys that weren't writing, we'd had a very poor manager and agent.
Absolutely.
And money hadn't reached us. And it was a matter of we had to eat.
A lot of money was kept away from us from live gigs. There were situations like we played in the Philippines, and the guy, the promoter there, for 1 week we made £26,000, which in those days was a lot of money.
Yeah.
We were getting £80 a night between us. We were playing to 40,000 people a night.
And he was paying you £80?
And we were having £80 between us.
You see, we went there to the Philippines, and our idea was we were going to be playing in the bar in a hotel, and in the daytime we would go out and lie on the beach and swim, and it was going to be like a holiday. But when we got there, we were playing in this huge coliseum. We had about 6 records in the top 10. Literally, nearly all the top 10 was us. But we didn't know, because the world was a different place.
Yeah,
and so there's no way you can know these things.
I mean, now you would. With YouTube and everything, within 1 minute, you know.
Still, the company, the record company, the manager,
Well, I think the manager didn't want us to know.
Oh, okay.
I think the money.
This is
You
what
see,
I'm
I think the manager did extremely well.
I think
it's very simple.
His kids are well.
He was a very successful man, the manager.
His grandkids are set for life, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very simple thing. It's what people do is they call it double selling. So they will sell you for £1,000, and they tell you that you were sold for 200 or something like that. And I think that most of our career, in the first incarnation of the Zombies, that was happening. We certainly know it happened quite a lot, because once in a while we talked to promoters and we managed to get them to